JMock is a pretty large framework, so we're not going to cover everything that JMock can do. I just want to give you a very simple example of how you can use JMock to do some mocking. What we're going to need to do is to add JMock to our project to start. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and go in here and go to our build path, and then we'll add external archives. And we're going to go to our JMock, and we don't need everything, we just need this JMock 2.6 jar, Hamcrest 1.3, and then this Hamcrest library. And what we need to do is configure this build path, because what will happen is that since JUnit uses a different version of these Hamcrest jars, it can have problems when we try to do the mock, because the mock is using a later version, at least at the time that I'm recording this course. So what you'll need to do is to go to Order and Export. Then you can see where JUnit 4 is showing up, and it's above these Hamcrest jars. We need to move these Hamcrest jars up so that they're above JUnit, so that these get loaded up here first. This is basically the order that these show up in the class path. Now what will happen is that these ones will be used before the JUnit ones. Now that we have that set up, what we want to do is to modify our test so that we're going to have this work with JMock instead of using our stub. Now in JMock, the way that we do this is we create a mockery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mockery called context. That's usually the name we give it. Then once we have this mockery, we can create a mock with it. So I'm going to create a variable for notifier. I'm going to make it final. I'll do final notifier, and then we're going to call this mock notifier. This is going to be our mock, and we can create this by doing context.mock and then specifying what we want to mock. We want to mock a notifier interface, so we'll mock this notifier class. What this will do is it'll give us an object that implements that interface that we can control how it responds to calls on it, just like a stub, and we can get information about what has happened to it. What we do is we set up some expectations, and then we check those expectations. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reinitialize our service. We're going to make a new tracking service, and this time we're going to pass in that mock notifier. This way our tracking service will be using this mock instead of the stub it was using before. After that, we're going to set up a check. So we're going to say context.checking. Then we're going to do new expectations, and we're going to define what the expectations will be. The way that we do this is there's a language that we can use basically out of these Hamcrest matchers, and the most common thing that you'll do is something like this. If we say one of, and then we're going to pass in our mock notifier, send goal met. So what we're basically saying here is that we expect that this send method should be called on mock notifier with goal met one time. If it doesn't happen, when we check our context later, when we verify that everything happened, it's going to fail. If it happens more than once, it'll also fail. It needs to happen exactly one time. We can also make it so that this will return a value. We can say will return value true. Now, if we go to the end of our test, we can add a check. What we want to do is say context.assert is satisfied. And what this does is it makes sure that whatever we specified here has actually happened. If we don't put this in, it won't check any of this. So we do have to put this in. This is basically our assert. Now if I save this, and then we take a look, this whole time we've been having tests run. You can see one test case ran recently. We don't have any errors. But you'll notice if I change the text here on this and save, we get an error, expectation error, unexpected invocation. So what happened was we were expecting the wrong string that was being passed in here. So if this isn't called or the wrong thing is called, it's going to fail that test. And that's the value of using a mock is that the mock is able to check that certain things were called on it. And by using JMock here, we can set this up. We don't have to write any code like we did for this notifier stub. Instead, we're dynamically creating a mock. We're setting up some expectations on that mock, and then we're asserting that those expectations happened. And like I said, this is just the basics of using mocks. I just wanted to give you an idea of how you might do something like this with JUnit.